Good morning, it's Karen, and we are going to be talking about the books that I read in June. We are halfway through July already, and I have yet to talk about all of the stuff that's been going on in June. So I have here my list of 9 books that I managed to finish in June. The first book that I finished was The Death of Mrs Westaway by Ruth Ware. This is my second Ruth Ware. I read one by one and I quite enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. So I thought I'd try The Death of Mrs Westaway. This was sold to me as gothic. It is absolutely gothic. I'm a big Rebecca fan, so I was kind of hoping for those vibes. I got those vibes. I just didn't love it as much as I thought I would. It is a slow burn of a novel and really encapsulates that gothic family secrets coming to light. The main character of the story gets this letter that she's invited to this funeral of her grandmother, and she knows it's not her grandmother, so she's thinking there's a mix-up, but she's in dire need of money, so she decides, well, these people sound kind of fancy and kind of rich, so maybe I'll go and I'll visit them and they might be able to help a girl out. And she goes and discovers a lot more to this family. For me, it just took a little bit too long to get into the story, and for that I gave it the middle of the road 3 stars. The next book I read was a 5 stars. You're going to hear me talk about it probably by the end of the year, and that's Odd Child Out by Gillian Macmillan. This is the second book in the Jim Clemmo Inspector series, and this was a very intense book. I listened to this on audio. This is a book about two young boys. One is a kid battling cancer, and the other is a Somali refugee, and their friendship, one of the kids pushes the other in the water. The kid in the water ends up going into critical care. The inspector is given this case because they're trying to keep it on the down low. They think possibly there could be some racial motivation, or if there isn't, that the public would perceive there being some racial motivation. So there's a lot of conversation about refugees and refugees belonging, and how the refugee lifestyle, when they come to a new place, how that can bring with them some traumas and some residual connections that can ultimately create a lot more friction in the community. Without there being spoilers, there is a funeral, and I really loved the fact that at this funeral there was a eulogy and talked about how, yes, this person was a very good person. Here's all the wonderful things that they are known for, but let us also acknowledge the things that they were working on, their flaws, the things that we might not necessarily say are the nicer things. I liked the idea of acknowledging the whole person instead of creating a saint out of somebody. This was a really hard-hitting book. I cried a lot, and it really drew me in, and for that, I already said I gave it 5 stars. The next book I read was an anticipated release, and it is going to be in my next Moon review, so I'm not going to spoil too much, but it is Arrow to the Moon by Emily X.R. Pan. I thought this was okay. It was not my favorite. It is also a young adult novel. It is sort of Romeo and Juliet love story, fated lovers, and I realize that I am not really into any sort of fated lovers because there is no tension. Authors sometimes use that as an easy out to create chemistry between two characters, just to say, oh, they're fated, there they are, that's the couple, when I think there should still be work done in that relationship, in building those characters and why they are meant for each other. Unfortunately, the pacing didn't really work for me, so I'm going to give this 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I listened to was The Thursday Murder Club. Oh my goodness, this was another anticipated read for me, and this was another 5-star read for me. I knew I was going to love this. I didn't realize how much I would love this. This is a murder mystery where the main detectives are retirees in a retiree community. They are 65 plus and they are rocking life. They've created this club and they go through cases together, cold cases, and they guise it as they call it. Oh, what is it called? It's like Japanese opera discussion. They've made it sound like super dry, so nobody wants to come into this place that they've booked, this multi-purpose room. And they go through these forensic files and they absolutely just crack me up. There are 4 main characters. My favorite is Joyce because Joyce reminds me of every old lady that I have loved and adored and that I hope that I will be someday. This was my 5 stars. I delved in right away to The Man Who Died Twice. This is the second book, and I absolutely loved this one as well. This one follows a bit more of Elizabeth's side of the story and how her background helps her solve the mysteries and the way that she's able to manipulate and get information, whether or not it is in a savory way or not, let's just say. But this one was really, really good for 4.5 stars. I was on a roll with audiobooks and listening to amazing audiobooks, and thankfully my hold came in and I was able to reread, but this time on audiobook, Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. You are not going to hear the last from me about this book. In fact, you are going to get tired of me talking about this book because I loved this. This demonstrates the author's complete ability to interweave and interconnect different stories, and they all come together in this wonderful, neat little bow, and it just choked me right up both times. This is a 5 stars both times. I absolutely loved it. There was so much for me to grasp onto. One of the characters, she's an author on tour, and she keeps getting these questions about motherhood and why she's left her daughter and why she doesn't want to be with her daughter. And that really resonated with me because currently at that time I was making the decision to leave my current workplace and spend some more time with my daughter because I need that time with her. So that connection right there just brought it right back, made it very real for me, and this is a very touching book for me, very special. The next book I read, I don't know why I read it, but it's all the buzz right now, and I did a review on my beach reads, and that is The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. This is a reread for me, and you can go and get all of my thoughts on my reread, but basically my thoughts haven't really changed, and I still think this book is very average, but I also think this book is not really for me. So 3 stars, middle of the road, go check out my review. The next book I read, I was searching for a new audiobook. I didn't know what to read. I wasn't in the mood for some kind of mystery, so on a whim, I took out My Lady Jane by these 3 authors. I thought this was a super fun audiobook. The narrator was hilarious. I absolutely loved how she read the main character, Lady Jane, and completely encapsulated her sort of flares of tempers and attitudes and stubbornness and decisiveness, and I just absolutely loved it. This was a very weird book because it's kind of alternate history fantasy, and they definitely butcher English history, and I'm very familiar with this era, so it was kind of fun to see what they had changed. There were a few quirks that I didn't love, but they were there and whatever, and like lyrics to songs, to modern songs like Beatles songs and AC/DC songs, and oh, okay, sure, whatever. There was also animals, and I'm not a big fan of animals talking in books. That is just the thing that I have always hated. And this one had people that transformed into animals, which is kind of in the realm of pushing it for me. So I really struggled with that, but the characters were just fantastic. The book did go on for a bit too long. I think it could have ended about 70% of the way, and then there was this weird bear scene that I thought probably could have been cut, and then it just kind of kept going, and then I was just really like, okay, are we done yet? Okay, okay, like this. And I was done with it. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, but highly enjoyable, and I highly recommend it for an audiobook listening gem experience. And the last book that I finished was Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I just have been seeing this everywhere, and I hadn't really seen anybody read it just yet, and so I haven't really heard much of how it's being received. I did do a review where I compared Jenny Han's book and this one, and I found them to be rather similar, except I preferred this one. And I think I preferred this one more because it's just more my age demographic. This is probably the perfect 2022 beach read. This is really great. There's the romance, but there's also some healing from past mistakes and revisiting those mistakes and maybe changing them and forgiving and being forgiven. And there's a lot of that discussion, and I think this is a really precious book, and I would highly recommend it. I gave this one 4 stars. And that was it, 9 books. I don't know how I managed that. 5 of them were audiobooks, so I totally understand how I was able to get through that many, and my commute was just ridiculous, so that explains why I was able to read so many. Now I am not reading so many because I don't have that commute. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye. I love Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, but I love this book. I would almost say more. I don't know. Am I willing to say that right away? We'll let it sit a little bit more.